this is, of course, our first webinar, and we're a little nervous, or I'm a little nervous at any rate, but we have been practicing, so hopefully this will go pretty smoothly. I think so far so good. And thank you for being our guinea pigs. But mostly thank you for being a member. This is for members only today. We want to be able to offer more things for our members because we so appreciate you being supportive of the museum, and especially right now with everything going on and us being closed. We really thought it was important to add more value in virtual ways as much as we can. So that's partly why we're doing this. We will also be doing webinars for the general public as well. So we'll probably do a bit of mix of that. And if you have thoughts about topics, you are welcome to let us know. We are working on one with James Studeris, who has done the time-lapse Northern Lights photography. We had it on the video screen actually in the show itself. And he's primed to come. We just have to coordinate a date with him. So that'll be the next one that we do. And then I'm sure we'll probably start getting into a rhythm and doing them more often. And I guess that's it. And so we'll get rolling here. So that's our title slide. So you know why you're here. And being close to us, you know what our mission is. But I really like this quote from Albert Einstein, which is look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better. Because I think it's kind of a good expression of our mission and why we do what we do. And that marriage of art and nature. Art actually is kind of a window to help you look at nature maybe a little deeper, a little differently than you would otherwise. And indeed, you will, I think, understand things better. The interconnectedness of life, I think, is such an important lesson that nature has to teach us. And of course, exhibitions are our primary way to share our mission. Of course, that's online at the moment. But hopefully this summer we'll be opening in some kind of capacity, and you'll be among the very first to know, and we'll have more access as members than other folks. And I do field questions at different times about how we create exhibitions here. They don't magically appear because the exhibition fairies, you know, wave their little magic wand downstairs. It's a lot of work by a few people. We do have an exhibitions and art committee. Penny's been involved in that for a long time. And they help generate ideas, help do some research for us, maybe help hook us up with a potential lender. But all the details really are left to us as the staff. For the bigger shows, we're working 2 to 3 years out. Some shows, maybe, say for the second floor of the classroom, might come together a little bit in a shorter time frame than that. But for any more a larger show with a lot of artwork, obviously that's going to take some time to pull together. We do sometimes rent shows. Probably you might remember our Birds and Art shows. We've done that twice, and we've done a few other rented shows as well. But generally, we're curating all of these in-house. And the exhibitions are funded by grants and individual donations for that purpose. We do not tap into our general operating support for funding the shows. We really keep that separate as restricted funding. So we want to make sure other things in our operation can keep going. So we do special fundraising for the exhibitions. And as I said, really staff handle almost all the details. And then here and there, we might hire some extra help in different capacities. And of course, volunteers pitch in as well. Another big question, how do you find the art for the show? And we have a lot of existing relationships with collectors, galleries, artists already, which is a huge help. If I'm looking for historic artwork of a certain kind of nature, I tend to know who we've worked with in the past, and those are often my first phone call. Referrals from folks on our art committee, board members, other colleagues. Again, sometimes we rent a whole show. And I am constantly looking for artists, and Lauren is as well. So we're on social media and online a lot for all kinds of reasons, and it's amazing what we've been able to find that way. And then there's subscriptions to art magazines like Western Art Collector, which have been a good source at times. And then, of course, we have lots of research to do. As soon as we commit to whatever topic we're going to do, we need to find kind of the story too. It's not just an artist, it's what is it about that artist, or it's not just a landscape, it's, what is the point to telling the story about the Arctic? Maybe it's a climate change thing that then we want to relate back somehow to us here. Conservation angles, because we're the kind of museum that we are, we don't typically focus so much on the art history angle, but we really want to weave in some kind of conservation story as well. And the writing starts pretty quick. We get things on our website to let people know it's coming up. We have all that early promotion that we need to do with magazines that require stuff 3 months or 6 months out. And then as the timeline unfolds, then we're doing serious writing for actually the panels that are in the show, activity guides, that kind of thing. And loans are a crucial part of every show because our permanent collection may weave into some shows. It's usually a few pieces. So almost everything you see generally on the first and second floor are probably loans. So it's not as simple as that might sound. There's a lot of paperwork, there's certificates of insurance, there's determining how we're getting that material here. Are they dropping it off for us? Are we shipping it across the country? If we are shipping, are we working with a museum that's going to mandate that it be a refrigerated, climate controlled truck? We need to know that on the early end because that's a huge budget item for exhibitions. And then when they're here, there's protocol with unpacking the material, condition reporting it. We have to store all the packing material safely until the return of the show. So those are just some of the aspects involved in loans. We obviously have to prep our spaces. So there's, we're picking colors, we're putting up walls, either volunteer or sometimes we hire a painter to actually paint those walls. That all happens in the weeks ahead of time. Then we're installing the show. There I am. I think Lauren probably took that for me. We were working, because believe me, it took both of us to work on hanging that paper piece by Lynn Hanson, because you can see it has some curl in it. So some things take a little planning in terms of installation. Other things are a little more straightforward. Often we incorporate videos, so that's another element of the show that would require a lot of prep in advance. And then of course there's the technology aspect of it, and all the labels and the vinyl titles, where we have the big title for the show. The lights, that's always the last thing when we're most tired. I hate doing the lights because we're exhausted by that point. And it's up and down and up and down and up and down ladders, but every show is hung a little differently, so you need to move the lights to make sure that everything's lit well. And then final cleaning of the space, and then we have our parties. I want to address how do you pick paint colors, because that comes up a lot. It seems like a lot of people enjoy the colors that we pick for our shows. So how do we do that? And it's really driven by the artwork in that particular show. And what I thought might be kind of fun as an example was I picked an image from a piece that's in our permanent collection, this Ray Strong painting. You've probably seen it hanging at different times. And what is going to make that painting look good? Now, of course, for a show, we're looking at multiple pieces of artwork. So what are the common threads with those pieces? But here, I'll just give you a sense of how much the background color can affect a painting. So some people might have looked at that piece and gone, oh, that blue in the sky, maybe that would be a good background for it. And I find it not a good background at all. I feel like it really washes out the sky. I just don't feel like it does anything for the artwork at all. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it. But then we could try like a deeper, darker blue, and that's better. I don't love it, but I feel like it's better. It shows off the piece a little better. Some people might go, oh, there's a lot of yellow in it, so you should do like a golden yellow around it. And I would say, please don't. I don't think it does anything for the piece. I think it makes that, you guys can see my mouse, right? Moving, okay. So it just, I don't know, all of a sudden that's called out and not necessarily a good way. Like that's not really the main thing that you want to see in the piece. And then plum, which is one of my favorite colors for a lot of artwork. There's not a lot of artwork that looks bad, I don't think, on plum. And I think Lauren earlier was saying she liked the plum on this, and it does bring out different different features in it, and you start seeing maybe some little bit of purples and pinks in some areas. Like there's a little flush of pink here. It's just different things come out of it. And then I like the dark green. I probably would like this a little bit deeper and a little bit darker green than I was able to get on the screen, but I think it makes the oaks really, pop out. So you can see, I guess, yeah, how much the color of the background influences how you see the piece of art, and then multiply that by multiple pieces of art. So early in the process, we will cut out thumbnails, or we'll look at it all and we'll go, wow, what are some complementary colors? What are some hidden colors in a lot of the pieces? Maybe that would be good for the background. And that's kind of where the conversation starts. So back to installing the artwork, I wanted to include this photo. I think Lauren took, well, I guess I did because Lauren's actually in the one photo here. But Nathan Huff, who has some very interesting pieces in our show, needed to, and we wanted him to actually hang this piece, which you have a sense in this photo. This is 3 paper panels that make up the one piece of art, and we would have had no idea how we wanted to hang that. There's no framing on it. So we would have had a lot of concerns about, wouldn't want to damage the piece accidentally in the process of hanging it. So thankfully, he immediately said he would come out and hang it for us, which, excuse me, is a huge blessing from our point of view. And then this is kind of a common way when we're ready to hang, we put these things down on, say, bubble wrap or some kind of cushion on the floor to try and make sure we know where we want to hang them. Sometimes things come in with a weird frame, or there's something about it that you realize your original plan for it is not going to work. So we really need to lay them all out and make sure we have them placed where we want and where things help each other and they don't fight each other. It's also one reason we often have 3 colors in a show, by the way. You may have noticed we obviously have the off-white walls, but then there's usually 2 other colors at play, sometimes just one. And it seems to help, because sometimes a piece actually is fighting with a color that you originally thought it would be good on. So that leaves you some options. And then, of course, it's party time, and this makes me feel very nostalgic looking at this, at these photos. Some of you might even find yourselves in them. We always love our opening receptions. We're a little tired, but then our energy picks up as everybody starts coming in. But of course, it may be a little while before we are able to get together in quite that quantity of people, but we look forward to when we can. Following the opening, we do training with our volunteers and docents, usually that full week of being open. And so here they were getting trained on the National Lands shows. So they know how to address any kind of visitor questions, phone calls, etc. And they enjoy it. So for Starry Nights in particular, this show was in the works for, I think, about 2 years. And I was excited about doing it and wanting to do it because I know how great our night skies are here right in the valley. And for those of you that do live here, you know that we get good night skies mostly. And depending where you are, it could be very good. And most of the world doesn't have that. So it's something that I really wanted to bring attention to and some sensitivity to, because most of the world indeed is very challenged and are not going to see more than the moon and the very brightest planets and stars. And they don't see most of what we do. And one of my goals with the show because you have to, again, decide kind of your story and how you want to present it, was not to go with a real academic treatise on nocturne paintings. And indeed, we had done a nocturne painting show during Penny's time a while back. So it needed to be different than that show. Maybe have a couple nods to it, but it needed to be its own thing. And so I just really wanted to have the artwork help inspire the same sense of wonder and mystery that you have when you actually are looking at the night sky. Hopefully we achieve that. That's up to you to decide that, but that was certainly a goal. And we definitely wanted a nice range of artworks and mediums and styles and eras to help accomplish that. I did feel it was important to have historic artworks in the show. I felt like that kind of lent it a certain gravitas, to have a nod to early nocturne paintings, especially for our area or artists of our area. So Lockwood de Forest, Charles Rollo Peters. I know Peters was represented in that prior show that we did. Ferdinand Lundgren, John Wesley Cotton, Leon Dabo, and Arthur Holman were the artists we were able to get. And with historic artworks, you have to do a little digging sometimes to find that source who's willing to lend and able to lend. So obviously, there's a certain amount of serendipity when you're reaching out to these lenders to see what you actually can get, and can you get kind of that range and some of those artists that you really want to capture. So a little background on a couple of the artists. Lockwood de Forest is a big name, right, for our area. We have 2 now pieces in our permanent collection of his work. Sullivan and Goss has a lot still in their collection, and I know there have been different shows over the years with his artwork. So he was born in New York City in 1850, and of course, when you're talking the mid-19th century, a lot of these artists are going to be more East Coast or maybe not even in the U.S. Typically do some European travels for their training and to get inspired, which he certainly did do that. Was mentored by Frederick Edwin Church, but he was very inspired by his foreign travels, and that actually was a lot of his life, and not everybody necessarily knows that he was very into the decorative arts. He had his own design firm, Associated Artists, along with Louis Comfort Tiffany, and everybody knows Tiffany, right? Tiffany lamps and other things. Opened his own design company in New York City where Carnegie was one of his clients. I mean, that's a pretty big, wealthy client to able to have. So he had a lot of success. I did find an image of him which really exemplifies his love of travel and his cute little costume there, of whatever, to me that looks Eastern European, but I don't know for sure. And then I just discovered that Bryn Mawr College has an interesting collection of some of his deck arts material, including this swinging settee down on the bottom. And then this is the picture up here in the upper right is a detail of one of these panels down here. So you can see the incredible detail and the Eastern influence. He spent time in India. This was actually made by a firm in India. So it was a huge, huge part of his life. By the end of the 1890s, he was focusing more on his painting. He started wintering in Santa Barbara, and then he actually moved here in 1919. And he did enjoy doing a lot of nocturnes in Western landscapes and local landscapes. And they were really just to enjoy the scene. There wasn't a story necessarily set in the nocturne paintings. It was just the beauty of that. And this is one of my favorite paintings. We have 3 of his artworks in the show, and I have become very partial to this particular one done in 1907. And just the moodiness of it. It's almost like a Turner. It's really, really beautiful. Ferdinand Lundgren is another historic artist that I knew we had to have for the show, and we did secure 1 piece. We had done a show with his artwork, all focused on the desert, and I want to say like 2010 or 2011. I think Penny might have set that one up before I even came on the scene. Born in 1857, died in 1932, so a very similar timeline to De Forest. Again, trained on the East Coast. travels to, right, Europe, gets all inspired. I found the French painting Il Cafe, which doesn't even, to me, doesn't even look like Fernand Lundgren. I was startled when I saw that, but that's the influence of being in that area and hanging out with the artists that he no doubt was hanging out with. He got hired eventually by a Santa Fe Railroad, like a lot of artists did, and traveled throughout the Southwest. And he really did some bonding with Native American tribes. He became an honorary tribal member of the Hopi. So he apparently was very respectful of Native American tribes. And I love this illustration that I found from 1873. So he did a lot of illustration work as well. Moved to LA in 1903. Then he came up to Santa Barbara, which is not an uncommon path for some of these artists to be down there, but travel up here, if not actually move up here. And it's no surprise given how wonderful it is. But he always loved traveling to the desert. That was one of his primary things, to do these amazing paintings. He helped found the Santa Barbara School for the Arts in 1920. And then he ended up bequeathing his collection to the people of Santa Barbara, which eventually became UCSB. So they have quite a large collection. And that is indeed where we were able to borrow this particular piece. It comes off a little bright in this particular photo. It is not quite that bright. But that said, it is a full moon in the Mojave. So if you've been out in nature, in a full moon, it actually does feel pretty darn bright. And you can see these, these little stars hanging out in the sky. And just a beautiful kind of tonal painting of the desert. So we were very excited that UCSB was willing to lend that. Charles Rollo Peters was another historic artist, and again was represented in that show that we did a while ago. Similar lifetime as the other guys, more Northern California based. I think he was maybe born in the Bay Area. Spent a lot of time in Monterey. I love that he was known as the Prince of Darkness, and then I saw Poet of the Night. So you can tell that nocturnes that was his one of his primary things. That's really what he was known as. And I found this other image, Portals of the Past, just to kind of give you a sense of other artwork that he's done. John Cotton was a revelation for me. We borrowed this piece from James Maine Fine Art. He's a Canadian American, Art Institute of Chicago, traveled, but really is primarily a printmaker. He did do other kinds of paintings. And aquatint is what was the exciting discovery for me. That was new. And it's kind of an etching technique that is meant to mimic watercolors. So it's washes of ink on the paper, and it ends up, you can tell it's a print, but it really does look like a watercolor. It's kind of interesting bridge of both worlds. And being a Santa Barbara scene, although I heard a lot of discussion at the opening night of people trying to figure out where is that scene. I have not heard anything definitive yet about that. And then Arthur Holman was another really cool discovery from Greg Colley, whose California Art Company. We borrowed artworks from him before. A little bit later artist, kind of, which is great. I wanted someone kind of moving into a more contemporary style. And he ended up really falling in love with abstract art. It was very freeing, apparently, to him when he finally became acquainted with it. And he was also very into metaphysics. And then when he was in Egypt, which no doubt has amazing night skies, probably unless you're in Cairo, was blown away, by the skies that he was able to see at night, and really got into outer space. So he did actually a lot of images like this. And he loved the Hubble telescope images. They continually inspired him. So we don't have a date on this particular painting, but I think it was like in the 70s, 80s where he was doing a lot of this and beyond. And it's also, that particular piece is kind of a nice bridge to the astrophotography that we also have in the show. Across from his piece, we hung a contemporary artist, Nancy Bingham, that I'll talk more about. We wanted to get in several contemporary artists that are local or Californian and who do really different kinds of interpretations of the night sky. This particular one, Nancy Bingham, she was in our National Land Show. She had the wonderful woodcut print that was the fire. Do you guys remember that incredible piece? And Lauren had the brainstorm to reach out to her to see if she had done anything with the night skies. And I don't think she had, right, Lauren? But she got excited about the idea, and so she followed up on it and then showed us this and wondered if we would be interested. And it was like, yes, no brainer as far as that goes. It's just really, I think, an extraordinary piece. And then we discovered later that she used to work at NASA. We didn't know that we were asking a NASA person to do a piece about the night skies. So because of that background, she brought this otherworldly perspective, where she's not on Earth, she's looking down on it. And she captures, down here, that's light pollution. That's what you see from space. And then, of course, the Milky Way, and it's just really an incredible piece. And it barely looks like a print, I don't think, up close. So we were very excited to have that piece as part of our show. Nathan Huff, we showed him hanging his artwork, and this one piece is called Phantom Limbs. He talked about that feeling that amputees can have, the phantom limb syndrome. Are you guys familiar with that? Like if you've lost a limb, apparently the body and the brain, they haven't adjusted yet. And so you get pain signals from something that's actually not even there anymore. So he incorporated all these cut ghost-like limbs that float through the oak tree, which you can see a little bit better here. There's some glare on it, but you get a better sense of these branches, these cut branches floating. And what I mean, there's many things I love about it. It's heroically sized, as you know, and it's just so different and so imaginative that I think it really does evoke that mystery and wonder that the skies themselves kind of do as well. And it's dreamy, maybe nightmare-y, I don't know. Right? It's in being a very modern, kind of abstract, interesting piece, you just don't know quite how to interpret it. But I think that's where people can get very engaged with the piece of art, when it's maybe not so straightforward. And we have two other pieces. This is one other piece that are smaller that hang near that, Drift and Root, which he just did last year. And this is gouache, which hopefully you guys remember what gouache is. Yes? Yeah. So, that thick kind of opaque watercolor medium. So I don't know. It's a very similar tree to the other tree. He's got these sheets that are kind of acting as sails in the tree. You got a rowboat. It's up to you guys. And this curved down shape to me kind of seems like the hull of a boat. Like if you were in the water looking up, that would be the shape of a lot of boats, going above you. So I'm not sure what he's saying, and I like that about it. And hopefully you do too. Chris Peters was an artist that we discovered through our friends at Sullivan and Goss. This is not an actual landscape. He doesn't tend to do that. He creates imagined landscapes based on, obviously this could be a real one, but it's not actually a real one. And I love the tonalism of it. I love the dreaminess of it, and just thought it was really special. It reminds me a little bit of that Lockwood de Forest one, right, that I showed earlier, that had that same kind of very dreamy tonal look at moon and reflection, which this certainly does as well. So it's kind of a neat pairing. And in fact, we have it hung near one of the Lockwood de Forests because I wanted people on their own to kind of see if they felt a little bit of a connection between the two artists. Lynn Hanson, we've shown her work before. She's been in she was in our National Land Show with the wonderful fox image, the not Catalina, but the Channel Islands fox on the Santa Cruz Island map, and another show as well. really just a unique take, whatever she does. And she had done this one in 2017, as we discovered. And so this is like a little ghost-like tent structure. I don't know if you can tell that or if you happen to see it in the show itself. But again, kind of getting to that dreamy thing, like you kind of want to be there in a tent looking up at the stars. And one of her things is, she repurposes these old papers that she finds, old blueprints, old maps. This is a piece of drafting vellum. I'm not sure where she finds all of her old stuff that she uses as her substrate for the art, but I am a fan of it, given that it's basically upcycling something that probably would have ended up in the trash. And Eric Merrell, he was one of the early contemporary artists I reached out to. I knew he did nocturnes, and he's very involved in the California Art Club. I think he's a board member. And as it turns out, there had been a short video done of him actually painting in the dark. So unlike a lot of artists who are going to be doing these nightscapes in their studio, in their homes, based on memory or maybe photo, but he's actually out there doing it as a plein air artist, which is a trick because it's really dark. And if you get a chance, do we have the link to that, Lauren, like on our website? So go check out the exhibition page for this show, and there is a link, so if you want to, you can actually see that short video, which is really nice, about him enjoying the desert at night and doing these kinds of artworks. And there's a picture of him at twilight doing, or maybe sunrise, who knows, doing his magic. Night sky photography was another element that we wanted to bring in. And of course, Mark Munch was one of those photographers right away. We wanted to reach out to, as we have for many shows. He's so amazing. And for him to be right there in Santa Barbara and be a super nice guy to work with, that made it really easy. Brady Cabe was someone that Mitra, when she was here, had let me know about. Lauren and I would really team up, particularly on the photography element, and we were on Instagram a lot. So we would, Instagram is almost becoming like an easy way to look at an artist's portfolio. I don't know if you guys are on Instagram. I totally love it for that purpose. Because you can just keep scrolling through and go back to see what else that they've been posting. And he had a really stellar image, that we ended up wanting to feature. And then I'll talk more about the other folks. Ivan, actually, I don't have represented in the slideshow, but he was someone we found through our National Lands show, and does just really gorgeous, mostly black and white photography. So this is the Mark Munch image. You probably know we featured it in a lot of the publicity materials for the show, for, I think, obvious reasons. Particularly because it is Figaro Mountain, so it's a local landscape. The Channel Islands are off in the distance. I mean, there's just a million things to fall in love with this image. So I just love it every time I see it. He was going to do a photography workshop for us, but now that we're actually, keeping the show, wrong way, a little longer, we may still be able to do that for anyone who wants to learn night sky photography. He's not traveling. And he has this incredible image of northern lights in Canada. It's one of the best I've seen, and by this point, I think Lauren and I had looked at a lot, and this is another super magical moment. The reflection in the creek, right? The motion of that creek with all the curves that it does, which really mirrors, all the motion that's happening in the image too. It's just, I could look at that all day long. And this is the Brady Cabe image that I mentioned, that he did back in 2015, that we did use a bit also. It's also the entry image that you see, boom, right away. And I felt really captured the spirit of what I was trying to go for with the show, of You know, here's a tiny little human, and here's the vastness of our galaxy and this shooting star, and just how incredible. Just what a magical place. So Standing in Awe is his title, which is super apropos. Sometimes art comes to you just by, I don't know, by magic, serendipity, I don't know. David Goldstein, who I don't know if everyone here on the webinar today knows David, but he is a local retired architect. He was actually the architect for our building back in the 80s. And he knew we were doing the show because, you know, we promote that we're doing these shows to all of you guys. And out of nowhere, he sent me this image with no context, essentially. And would you want it for the show? And I had no idea what I was looking at. I wasn't familiar with what was going on as represented with these little star things on El Cap. Did you guys know? Did you already know about this? Because I didn't, but it made me look, and of course it's interestingly done. It's a neat rendering, and that led me to this piece, Aya Okawa, Human Constellation, and then of course then the mystery was revealed. So these are rock climbers, and they're I don't think they're climbing now at night. I think they've settled in their little crazy canopies on the cliff face to settle in for the night. I don't understand. I don't even begin to understand how anyone could manage to do that. But it's a really interesting scene. And I think David's interpretation of it over here is really, really cool. So that was a really neat pairing, I think, that happened for the show. The other thing that we discovered, because I don't think we knew it going into the show on the front end, was Las Cumbres Observatory Network, which is in Goleta, just right down there in Goleta. And they were, when we reached out to them, we got a really cool tour. Susan Bellany, I know you guys know Susan, many of you. She actually helped hook us up with a friend of hers that works there. And we coordinated with her to get these amazing images. So they have 23 telescopes all around the world at 7 different sites. But the magic of them is that they work together as a single instrument. So it's just an incredible thing. And astronomers anywhere in the world can book time on the telescopes and for whatever project, for whatever purpose. And also if there's some amazing phenomenon that suddenly happens, or meteors or that kind of thing, with this worldwide network, it's really the best way to kind of track and see what's going on with all this stuff. I believe this is Sedgwick. I think that's yes, okay, good, thank you. Which again, we were hoping to get out to. It's actually, I think, still down there. This actually is not part of the network at this time, just so everybody knows, but it is theirs. And in the process of working with them and putting together the show, I learned a little bit about the history of astrophotography. And the first photo of the moon was actually 1839, but the image no longer exists. And that was by Daguerre of the famous daguerreotypes, which hopefully you guys know daguerreotypes, some of the earliest kinds of photography. But what you see on the top is the first photo of the moon in 1840 by John Draper. Of course, it's degrading over time. There's all these spots or problems with the condition of the piece, but there's very clearly the moon is right there. So pretty incredible for 1840. By mere 40 years later, then we have the first capture of the Andromeda Galaxy, which was a combination of course, a telescope and a camera. And then again, flash forward another 40 years, and astronomers are now relying on the photography to help them understand what's going on in space. The human eye can only perceive so much, and so much happens in a very different time frame out in space, of course. So to have, images that can, camera there with its sort of open eye for seconds, minutes, however long, you're able to capture so much more than we can see with our naked eye. So photography is crucial to the study of space. And to get the kinds of images that we saw at the beginning, that's hours and hours and hours of labor with people taking, I don't know, potentially hundreds of images and kind of stitching them all together, looking at them with different lenses of colors to bring them together to make a full color image. It's really quite a technical process to get those images that we live to see. The final touch in all of it was poetry. I really felt that poetry would be the magical thing that really got across my goal of expressing and hopefully inspiring that mystery and wonder of the night skies. And I reached out to Dan Gerber, and he signed on right away, which I felt really lucky about, and shared, I forget now, 6, 7 different poems that we have. And I wanted them represented as artwork alongside the other artwork, which is why we printed them really big. We printed them on the background that we did so that they would feel seamless with the other kinds of artwork around them. I did, of course, ask Dan if he was okay with that, which it was a choice he probably wouldn't have on his own made, but he decided he really liked them that way. So hence we have the poems there. So I'll give you a second to read it, and then I'll show you one more. Okay. And then particles. Maybe I'll read this one. So this is part of a much longer piece. In the glittering domain of the summer triangle, buoyed up by crickets and frogs, Vega drags her rhomboid harp through an isthmus in the Milky Way. We need our quietest hours to hear Earth turning night into day, to feel it gather its waters against the pull of the moon. Doesn't that just make you feel kind of all tingly and excited and magical? I mean, what an incredible description of it. Just incredible. So we're very grateful to Dan for being part of the show. And of course, we do bring up the issue of light pollution, which was kind of the impetus for the show, at least in my mind, in a lot of ways. So here's an image of Earth. There's tons of these where you have a sense of the extraordinary amount of light that every single country puts off, particularly the more developed countries, of course. I ran across the stat that over 90% of Americans and Europeans can't see Orion or the Milky Way. I mean, that's sad. I think that's sad. Light pollution can actually disturb our own human sleep cycles. I know that a lot of lights outside from my neighbors really bothers me and does not help me sleep well. It confuses nocturnal wild animals. I ran across information that baby sea turtles die hundreds and hundreds because they're attracted to the artificial lights of, say, the beach resort that they're nearby rather than the moonlight reflecting on the water, which is what they're supposed to be drawn to. I mean, that's just depressing. And then, of course, there's just the massive amount of energy waste by overproducing the amount of light that we need. I did talk a bit with Nancy Emerson, who's very involved in We Watch, and I know Penny and Teresa, are you two? Yes, okay. And they have, of course, their Save Our Stars program under the auspices of We Watch, and they do a lot of stuff. And a lot of it is working with the local governments to try and get regulations about how you actually light up your developments, your houses, to minimize that. And it's really all about keeping the light only where it needs to be and not wasting it with these big lights that overdo it. So I'm very excited that they do that here and keep a watchful eye on all of it. I think the eventual goal is to see if we could become a dark sky region, of which there's only 4 designated ones in California. And as you see, they are all big national parks or natural areas. They're not in any kind of developed areas. So with that, thank you. And you can turn your audio on. Your video is probably already on, and I am happy to take some questions. And I'm going to get out of that so we can all see each other. I see there's chats.
Stacey, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Really?
You know so much about the subject that just is it really pleasing to me.
Oh, thank you.
Really pleasing. Just from the perspective of the past director and your predecessor. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks.
Terrific. Terrific.
Thank you very much. So, oh, there's David Goldstein.
Oh, good.
I know. I wasn't sure who all was.
Did he hear you talk about his piece?
Stacey, I just want to say that I thought the whole presentation was not only educational, it was actually inspiring. I think it was just a wonderful indoctrination of what goes on in the museum in terms of the effort that goes into putting on one of these exhibits. Not only that, but the fact that of the educational value of the way you talked about the artists and their inspiration. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I may be a little bit prejudiced, so I think that, but I have to say, I watched this because I wanted to see how, how it looked. The slides were very wonderfully prepared, with a dark background and very easy to read. You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
Stacey.
Oh, I have another artist here.
I agree. That was really, we've got to show this to more people. You did just a perfect job. Everything you said and everything Danny said.
Yeah.
True.
Well, thanks. Were there any questions about anything that I presented?
We do. There is a question from Kay in the sidebar here. She was wondering how will the virus we're experiencing impact selecting topics for future exhibits?
Oh, great topic. Great question.
Whoa, well, I don't know. I don't know. We're so immersed in the crisis still that I think you might need a little distance. I will say, and you guys are all members, so I'll share this, and maybe some of you did the membership survey that we put out, but in terms of the exhibition programs, I think it's clear that the visitation to our area in here is going to be really slow for a while. So it does not make sense to turn things over the same speed that we've been doing. So we will be slowing down that kind of traffic. And we already have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline right now, including the Ansel Adams show, which we will not be doing this year, and we will push into 2021. The virus is also very much a climate issue. It's very much a human-animal interaction issue. We do want to talk about climate change next year, although all the scheduling now is kind of screwed up because we're pushing Ansel, into 2021. So I'm not sure exactly when all this is going to happen. But, I think as a group, we definitely want to be talking about some harder issues a little bit more. And, that's the thing. People need to understand this. This came from somewhere. Why did it come here? What are our challenges with climate change? I think it's going to be increasingly evident that climate change is a reality. Whether people want to believe it or not in the coming years.
The root of it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they've talked a lot about, there's the markets, but there's also just this incredible, we squeeze animal populations into these tiny little places, and then we live right butt up against them. And that's, an area of concern for sure.
I like your idea of doing small events for members where there would be social distancing, but members would feel special and be able to actually experience the artwork.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So probably the underlying question a lot of you is, when can we open?
Yeah.
Penny and I were talking about it before we started this. Indoor museums are classified as phase 3. So any of this phase 2 activity you're hearing about cuts us off. We're out. Outdoor museums are their own animal for various reasons, and that's fine. So maybe July. I mean, it's really hard to say. I feel like the timelines keep changing, right? And I think they're kind of on a trajectory to be accelerated. Just in terms of our own preparation, July is probably realistic anyway. We did, George's stuff was taken down, so the second floor is currently empty, and that's where our retrospective, our 2020 show is going to be. So we're in the midst of trying to call in those loans now and get that space set up in the coming weeks. We did get some exciting feedback that people want more video virtual tours, not just static, images. That was, I thought, really great feedback from the membership survey. So that's one thing we'll do, even if we're not open, but the show's up. We're learning how to do videos, right, Lauren?
We are.
You did a good job.
Thank you. I just wanted to share, we had another comment from the side because I know not everyone has audio. Gail mentioned that now we really want to see the show, and she hopes that we have the show long enough for everyone to see it. And we are working on an extension. We don't have an exact end date, but it is going to be up through 2021 for Starry Nights.
Yeah, so plenty of time. And again, as members, as soon as we get that okay and we have our supplies and routines and we're ready to go, you guys will certainly be the first to know and can start booking time to see things. It'll be a really quality experience, really, for you.
I just want to say too, speaking for the board of directors, we are going to be back. We're going to be back better than ever, and we're going to learn from all of this. And we hope you'll all come back and see us again soon.
We will.
We will.
Well,
Definitely.
I just want to say, because I never got to come in and see the exhibit, I missed the opening and then everything closed. Lauren, I'm really appreciating the things you're putting up, the videos and the back talks and the links. I watched the one about the night on the Mojave Desert artist. And
oh, wonderful.
It's really helpful to those of us who are cooped up at home and didn't get to see the show, and the backstories and the links to the videos, old and new. So thank you for doing that. They've been beautifully done and very well.
Of course. Well, we really miss seeing everyone, and we're trying to share something to brighten your day, because I know some people have been stuck inside and really need that creative outlet. So we're trying to give you some of that.
Great. Absolutely. Good job, Lauren. Good job, Stacey.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
Great program tonight.
See you next time.
Okay. Anybody, sign off anytime you want to go, but if you have any questions.
Stacey, I just wanted, can I throw a comment in here?
Sure.
I just want to mention, for me, art is not only something to look at, something to do, and astrophotography doesn't necessarily require a lot of special equipment or technology. Back in 2014, I don't know if you can see this or not, I just used my single lens reflex from up on the kitchen roof, and this was a lunar eclipse.
Oh, nice.
So it's not only something to look at, it's something to have some fun trying to do.
Absolutely. That's why we were excited to do a workshop with Mark Much, who does such amazing work too. And hopefully we can do that at some point later in the year.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I want to mention, since you brought that up, we do have our nature photography competition. So not night sky, but if you see any critters or animals in your backyard at home, you might see a bear if you're in Solving. If you have your camera handy, you can submit those to our competition, which is open through July.
Anything else, guys?
No, what I want to know is how come Eric didn't show his face?
I don't know.
Or just he signed off.
He's here.
I know. There he is. I see
Well, his box is here.
Come on, Eric, show your face.
I don't know how.
Oh, God.
You hear him anyway. There should be, honey, there's a bottom left, there should be a little start video symbol, like a little video camera.
You're not even going to try, okay? If you can hear me, that's great.
Probably in a bear costume.
That's
Yeah, I'm in my bear costume, but it's not that way.
Okay.
what, David? I guess he was signing off. No, yes.
All right. Be
Okay.
safe, everybody.
All right.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.